Hello, everybody. How are we today? Are we having fun out there? It is a beautiful Friday here in Los Angeles, and I don't know if I'm going to go the entire hour that I've been going normally. I actually thought that these shows would normally be like 20 minutes long, and then at an hour, I'm like, oh, I better let people get on with their lives. Chosen some more watches to talk about here. I don't know if I'll get to all of these, but I'm definitely going to do my best to cover as many as possible. Hello, Sunny. How are you? Hello, Artisan. Hello, KB. A little location check, if we will. I like to see where everyone's coming in from. Some of you I definitely recognize and know where you're from, but I'd like to have everyone say their name. Someone from Denmark. Watch you got for us today? New York City, Southern California, where I am, Ireland, South Carolina, Melbourne, Helsinki, Fort Myers, Florida, Oxford in the UK. Oh, it's raining in Australia. Well, Melbourne, Canberra, a lot from Australia. I don't know what it is. I think if you look at the numbers, Australia represents somewhere between about 7 and 10%. Oh, Louisville, Kentucky, cool. Somewhere between about 7 and 10% of the total aBlogtoWatch audience. But in terms of vocality, like on comments on the website and on YouTube, it seems to be disproportionately Australian. And I'm wondering why that is. Why San Francisco, Louisiana, love hearing Kuwait. Oh, that's interesting. Cool. I know some really, really important watch collectors in Kuwait. Slovenia, New Orleans, more from the UK. Australians loudmouths? I don't know. I've never thought about it that way. I mean, I'm a loudmouth in Los Angeles. I have to say, I remember the first time I went to Australia, and I think I was 18 or 19 years old, and I heard this saying that is now all around the world, that everyone says it now, but I heard it then. This was in the very early 2000s, and the saying hadn't really come to America yet. And I started saying it myself because I thought it was so great. Now everyone says, but there's no worries. I was like, what a lovely thing to do to say with people. Like, don't worry about it, no worries, always with the no worries. And I started saying that a lot. And then no worries found itself into sort of popular lexicon. And now a lot of people say it. And I don't know if people attribute it to Australia. I don't know if it came from other places. I heard it in Australia first, and I really loved it. So I would like to go back to Australia. I've been there. I've been New Zealand. I'd like to go back more. I had nothing but really positive things to say. But again, it's been more than a decade since I've been there. Yes, it is the Hakuna Matata, but no one's saying, Hakuna Matata. Austria, home of the Glock. Well, thank you for reminding us that. Were you the one that yesterday said that Austria is known for its guns? Someone said that. I never really thought about that. Aussies can talk like sailors. Well, you guys are surrounded by water, so there's that. So this is a Bulova, and I forgot the name of this model, but this is part of the AccuSwiss collection. And if you remember, I was reviewing, here we go, this guy over here. Now this is the Joseph Bulova, and this is the AccuSwiss. So come back when the whole pandemic thing is over. It's funny you mention that, because I was thinking about how I'd love to go to the Gold Coast or parts of the Gold Coast, for vacation purposes, but it's such a big sort of stretch of the country that I have no idea where to go. So maybe I will have to ask some of you Australians for advice on exactly where to go for maybe like a family type of vacation thing on sort of the northeast part of Australia. AccuSwiss is such a stupid name. Well, it goes back a way, and it's sort of complicated. But anyways, so this represents the newest generation of Bulova's Swiss-made collection. And remember, Bulova has movements going, the Japanese movements, the Swiss movements, and all kinds of stuff like that. And then there's this thing here, which this came out, I don't remember how many years ago this came out, but I like this watch a lot. And again, I don't remember the exact name of this other than AccuSwiss. AccuSwiss is a name that goes back, and it was started with Accutron, which is a Bulova name, and Accutron as a brand will actually be coming back, but it's a whole other story. And in the AccuSwiss collection, it was not very it wasn't marketed very well at all, but they had some really great stuff, especially the price point. I think this was, maybe like 1,500 bucks. This has a Valjo 7750 automatic movement in there. And I like the combination of this very traditional kind of style dial, funky bracelet. And I just thought if you were someone that wanted a nice daily wear, wanted to call a little bit of attention, but was still a conservative watch, these were pretty nice. Not all of these were two-tone for sure. And I think some of them came on a strap. But look at that bracelet. If you had a bracelet like that, why would you give that up for a strap? Yeah, the new Accutron stuff, we're not really allowed to talk about it. They've been teasing it. It's interesting. It's high end. I'll tell you that. It's high end, but I cannot say more. Cannot say more. So this is an older Bulova AccuSwiss, and like I said, AccuSwiss was these ones. This generation of AccuSwiss, there's various different models in AccuSwiss, but these are a good deal. Like watches of this generation, if you want to go on eBay and things like that, I think you can get them for quite a good deal. This is a Luminox, and Luminox is a brand that makes some nice stuff for sure. It's a complicated area, the sort of tactical watch is what they call it, because there's a lot of competitors within that. There's Tracer, which is a little bit more, I guess you could say, authentic, and Luminox is sort of like a marketing version of Tracer. Luminox is Tracer is connected to the company MB Microtech that makes tritium gas tubes, but Luminox gained prominence because of things like Sharper Image, where they had this wonderful distribution in stores like Sharper Image, and the pitch was the Navy SEALs watch. It was a licensing agreement for sure, but it worked really well for them. And then in modern times, there's a little bit more competition in the space. The watches are a little bit premium priced, I think, for what you get, and this is one of the fashion versions of it. So this is a slightly bigger case. This is the carbon case, and you can see that they use the tritium gas tubes there in the dial. Again, I think that Luminox still makes a very good beater watch, and they have pretty good hardware. I went ahead and reviewed. We didn't publish it yet, one of their new Bear Grylls watches. That it's funky. There's a few of them, but they're like, I think that one was like nearly $900 for a carbon case and a Swiss quartz movement, and that's fine. But I'm just trying to articulate who the exact customer is. It's got to be someone who's really into Bear Grylls, and Bear Grylls is a survivalist TV personality who is an authentic watch lover himself. But this is one of the slightly older models, and you can see there, is that the U.S. Marine Corps logo or one of those things there. Oh, this is a limited edition. 888 pieces. What a number. What a number. Anyways, this is again one of the Swiss Quartz Luminoxes. A good beater watch, a good sport watch, a good daily wear. I think what I like about them is the focus on style. This one, like I said, was trying to be a little bit more stylish with this kind of like gray on black look there. And this is, I think, the 45 millimeter wide case. Some of their watches are a little bit weird, but for sure, I think Luminox still has a lot of really cool stuff in there. Hello, everyone who's joining. Here's a little micro brand that came out. Someone prefers the Mike Horn Panerai. Yeah, I mean, look, you're talking about the prices. The Mike Horn Panerai, what was that, like $30,000, $40,000? You know? Someone's asking about the Accutron. Reasonably priced? Well, that's a matter of perspective now, isn't it? I mean, look, today with the watch industry not really knowing when it's going to release a lot of stuff, I can't say when. It was supposed to be released at this Basel World. So I don't know when it's going to be. If you remember, there was a couple of days ago, I was talking about the American watch company Lumtech. And Lumtech assembled this watch. So this is a small American brand, but the watch was essentially put together by Lumtech. I know nobody really liked the name Verata, which I thought was funny because today we're all living in the world of a virus. So a watch called the Verata is kind of amusing, but I liked the case shape. I thought the die was legible. It's got a Japanese Miyota 9000 series movement in there. And I think that one of the things that has made me the happiest over the last, I'll say 5 years or so, is the proliferation of these micro brands. And why I like that is because the micro brands have been engaging in the type of creativity and risk taking, especially in design, that the big Swiss brands haven't been doing at all. And the Swiss brands, they just want to make money. Everyone wants to make money. That's fine. But in the pursuit of making money, they're like movie studios. They just do tried and true stuff. So everything is like the sequel to this, the rehash of that. And I look at the Swiss watch industry very much like I look at Hollywood, which I live in. And the idea is that there's very little risk taking. They put a lot of effort into a movie, and they want to make sure that it's sort of a sure shot. So what do? They have, formulas that they feel will work successfully with consumers, but enthusiasts, film buffs, are like, this is stupid and silly. And we have the same type of situation in the world of watches. And so you have to find those art house productions that take things to a new level aren't necessarily going to be as well funded or as has the marketing and distribution power. But that's I think an analogy that works well for me. And look, I mean, this is a genuinely fun piece. I really wish it had a matching bracelet. That would have been a whole other engineering cost. But you have to give it to companies who are making attempts to create tomorrow's next beautiful, iconic timepiece. And this is really only coming from the micro brands. You don't see any of it at all. Maybe that's an overstatement, but and I'm trying to be hard on the big brands on purpose. But if you look at all of their historical successes, it's been on risk taking and trying something different. What's the diameter of this one? That's a good question. Well, without the crown, it's not that much. Maybe about 42. So anyways, I think it'd be interesting when everyone speaks about watches and the small brands and the big brands to think of the analogies of Hollywood movie studios and the really big ones versus the smaller sort of art house productions. Oh, for all you Australians, I got an Australian watch for you right here. This was, I think, the first OWC watch I got, or maybe the second one. I have two of Dan's watches. So this watch was called Orange Watch Company because of Orange, Australia, but apparently there's a telecommunication company that got upset about that. Someone's asked me, do I trim my arm hair? Yes, I have to, of course. It gets a little wily, and do you know how unattractive it is when you go ahead and take pictures of watches and there's like your hair's, like going over the links? So I have to, on a regular basis, trim down my arm hairs. It's a necessary thing I need to do. I wouldn't shave them off. That would look awkward. It's that right mix. And over the years, I don't remember what it was, the first 3 or 4 years of the website, we got two types of comments on that particular topic. One comment was, that's so weird that you trim your arm hair. It's strange. And then the other comments were, you have too much arm hair, get rid of it. And there was this polar opposite between opinions. And I was like, I don't know what you guys want me to do. So I just did what I wanted to do, which was trim my arm hair so that it looks more attractive for you guys. So anyway, so this is an OWC watch. This is a micro brand out of Australia. And what I like about this is the proprietor, Dan Falk, he is obsessive over detail. So his thing is like trying to make the best pseudo Rolex watch he can from his garage in Australia working with Chinese suppliers. This one has the Swiss movement in there. I believe this has a Soprod. He's got a few. But I really admire the people behind this. I need more arm hair and less arm hair. Yes, that's exactly what it is. More and less at the same time. Some people are using, Timex bracelets as epilators? Oh, yeah, that's true. I brought out a couple of days ago the Timex M79 automatic that has one of the sort of like old style bracelets. Yeah, you run that over your skin a few times. Whew, it's gonna pull off a lot of hair. Have I had a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde watch? There actually is a brand called that has watches like that. You may not know that. Watches that look great in one, terrible in another. I don't know. That's a good question. I'll have to think about that. I mean, if it looks really terrible in one light, I probably won't wear it at all. So anyways, going back to this one, the detailing here is really important, and to recognize that, on a budget, you can get a lot of features and a lot of, like engineering that, I don't know, you wouldn't normally get. The big screws in the bracelet. This is only 40 millimeters wide, ceramic bezel. I just think that Dan did a really good job with this watch. And this is one of those companies that you'd never see advertising or anything like that. And these are made surprisingly well. So I have nothing but good things to say about this Australian brand, OWC. Let's see here. The Hulk, that's a bad one. And I don't know. I think that looks nice. In the sunlight, yes, the colors of the dial change a little bit. Gets a kind of little greenish blue action going on there. Speaking of dead brands, no, we didn't talk about dead brands yet. This is a Clockers, and Clockers died a little while ago, and this was one of their. I'm trying to think. It's just like I think it was upside down here. Oh, I guess the battery's dead on this one. But this brand originated with a very successful Kickstarter campaign, and then they turned into a real brand. So Clockers is one of my favorite examples of a company that was made by Kickstarter and then lasted a few years. Why did they die? Well, that's a good question. I'm not really sure the exact reason. It could be things like, oh, this is really cool how this comes off like that. Could be disagreements between the founders. I knew the gentlemen. They were nice guys. And a lot of it is they want to have a certain amount of sales per year. And so what happens with a brand like this is that it might be successful, but with too small a group of people. And the whole point of this watch was to celebrate people's love of slide rules. And so what you see here is you have a disc-based system for telling the time. The center disc would be the seconds, but since the battery is dead, it doesn't work. And you can see here how you read the time. The outermost dial, or the outermost ring, is for the hours, then minutes, and then seconds in there, and you'd read it this line. So it's actually pretty easy to read the time. I guess it's going backwards, so that doesn't make it easy. And things just sort of line up there. So, boom, so that's 9 o'clock, 9:00, 9:05, 10, and so you see how to read the time there. So I think that they did a pretty nice job, but again, the brand isn't there. And the idea was they had this interesting system where you could take the case. This was the 44 millimeter wide version. They had some smaller ones as well. Oh, hello, William. And then you can put it right back on there. These watches were a few $100s, so these were never that expensive, and I think that a lot of people liked Clocker for that. Yeah, people's love of slide rules. I mean, look, there's people that grew up loving slide rules, I guess. They used them in, I don't know, engineering school or something like that. I didn't even know what a slide rule was until I started learning about the Navitimer, and I was like, that seems like something I'd never want to use. I'm trying to get this on my wrist. There we go. This is size really small. But there you go. That was I don't remember the exact name of this one, but this was their 44 millimeter wide version that had the time with the seconds. They had a smaller version that only had the hours and the minutes. People's love of slide rules. Yeah, look, it's a thing. It's a real thing. In fact, I remember, when this watch first came out, a friend of mine wanted me to help him hook him up because his dad had studied with slide rules and was just obsessed with this watch. So I'm sure you could find these around, still for sale. You'd have to, of course, make sure to change the battery from time to time. But if you want an interesting, not too expensive, quartz watch with good storytelling, this is definitely around. Someone says they're still in business. Look, I got an email from them along with everyone else saying that they were shutting things down. So maybe they're still selling some stock. I don't know what the deal is, but don't expect to see new Clockers watches coming anytime soon. But this is one of them. And I thought it was neat. It's just amazing the amount of watches I have from brands that are no longer around. Did I just get up? Not too long ago. Here's a watch from the UK. This is one that we reviewed recently. This is part of the Rotary Heritage Collection. And this watch is... Okay, so this is what's funny about this. Rotary came out with a couple of watches in their quote-unquote Heritage Collection. But they don't represent actual watches that they made in the past. So this exact watch never existed in the past. So it's called the Heritage Watch because it celebrates their heritage, but pretty much every single Rotary watch celebrates the brand's heritage. So this leads you to believe that, they made a watch like this 50 years ago. No, this is entirely modern. It has a dial, which is inspired by older Rotary military watches, but it's new. And I think this watch was really nice because it was affordable. It's titanium, sandblasted grade 2 titanium. Of course, the dial is very Submariner-esque, but rather than their Mercedes, you see that the hour hand has an X motif through there. And Someone's saying, but what's about the strap? That strap is as interesting as a watch. Not sure which one he's talking about. So this watch has an 8 series Miyota, which I think was a little bit the weakness on here. I think it was a little bit more than people want to pay for 8 series, but it's fine. And I like the legibility of this one a lot. This one is a little bit of a sleeper hit, in my opinion. Yeah, Rotary has it. Yeah, I mean, this is a very classic brand in the UK. I didn't grow up in the UK, but for people that have, they've told me a lot of stories about it. And I've been to Rotary's office in London, and I've met the team, and they're all very, very nice people there. I think that this is a really cool brand. Yeah, so Rotary's headquarters is in London. Invicta much? You think this looks like an Invicta? Sure, hope not. But I think they did a really nice job with this watch. And again, because it's a modern size and it's lightweight titanium, that combined with this dial, I think this is a really cool one. A really cool one. I don't know that the strap is the one that I'd keep on here. This thing right here always reminds me of camping watches, and this strip of leather is designed to protect these holes, so it's functional, but I've never thought this looks that elegant. And on the theme of green, we've been talking about a lot of Undone because they make a lot of watches, but this is another version of the Basecamp 2, and this is their dial that was supposed to emulate the California dial, so to say. And then for April Fool's Day, they took this exact watch, and I don't know if they actually made it or not, but they made a joke where they took away the 12 o'clock hour marker and made it into like a marijuana watch. They had a marijuana leaf, and then the number 4 was a different color. So they sent this thing out for April Fool's Day. I don't know if they're actually making the watch because they said like a joke turned reality. So I don't really know, but anyways, this is, again, one version of the Basecamp. This is like a $300 watch that's highly customizable. And I just thought this was really killer. If you look closely on the dial there, you can see that it's textured, which I think is very nice. So Anthony's asked me how I decide which watch to wear in the morning. Was it yesterday that we talked about this exact question? Were you here for that discussion? I was joking around about it. I was saying, like, some days I can't decide, so I don't leave the house. I mean, look, I have what I call a rotation, right? So the majority of these watches that I'm showing you are not ones that I would say are just like hanging on the desk all the time. I have watches that are in sort of like a deep storage, so to say. And those watches sometimes come out, but I usually wear what's called in my rotation. And there's some watches I have out, and I just sort of, wear them as I'm into those watches for a while. It's like a pair of shoes or something like that. I feel like wearing that for a while, and then I retire it, and then I look at some other watches I haven't worn in a while. And that's a good thing about having a big collection, is that you can put some watches away for a while and then rediscover them, be like, oh, I forgot about this. Yes, I am a night person. I've always been a night person, and mornings are fantastic for sleeping. So to make the long story short, what I do sometimes is I'll have a watch, and then I'll want to wear it, and I'll try to build my day around that or build my outfit around that. Like, I'm wearing this watch right now, and I happen to be wearing a green shirt. And I said, you know what? I could go outside today because I'm wearing a green shirt to match my watch. So I can do that. Sometimes I have an activity, like I go, I do some sporting thing, and I'm like, okay, I need a watch to satisfy that. And I do find myself wanting to wear cool watches. So, like, I don't like leaving the house with just the Apple Watch. I actually like wearing the Apple Watch a lot, but I always try to wear a traditional watch on the other wrist. So I kind of feel naked if I go out of the house with just the Apple Watch. It's kind of strange. Oris? Yeah, there's some Oris in here. Okay, so let's continue to move on here. So this is, again, this is one version of the Undone Basecamp, and this is the one with the California dial. This came out recently. Does this have the display case back? I think this one does have a display case back. Yeah, so I think one of the things that I remembered from the updated Basecamp, the Basecamp 1, the Basecamp 2, new bezel, so a stronger bezel material. It uses mineral glass as opposed to something else. I think it was like a plastic element. And then the water resistant goes from 50 to 100 meters. I think it was always basically 100 meters, but they may have done one little thing to be more secure about it being 100 meters. Exactly like me, you wear your Garmin on your left wrist and you wear one of your 17 watches on the other one. Any GMT functions on the table? I find that a little ironic from someone whose name is GMT Master. You must have a thing for GMTs. Are there any GMTs here? Oddly enough, no. I had some GMTs the other day. We have no GMTs on this table. I'm so sorry. Actually, GMTs, while I love the idea of them, I'm not as much of a like crazed GMT fan as some others are. And I have GMTs, but I don't like seek them out. This watch, I don't know. This is probably one of the best stories of watches I have. This watch actually got me in some trouble with Tag Heuer. What is the spiritual successor to Seven Friday? That, sir, is a good question for another time. So this is the Tag Heuer Carrera. This is the caliber 1887 movement, and this is called the Nendo. And this was a limited edition exclusively for the Japanese market. And I think the first story here is I like this as an example of how advertising on aBlogtoWatch works, and I'll explain why. Tag Heuer, who's of course been a very supportive advertiser for a long time, had an ad unit for a while that pulled in their Instagram feed. We actually built this for them, and they really liked it. And basically, like watches from their Instagram feed would show up in the banner space. And I was surfing aBlogtoWatch, which I do, and I saw this come up, and I never heard about this watch. They never told me about it. I was like, that's really, really cool. So I ended up buying this watch. They were nice enough actually to send it out of Japan so I could get it in Switzerland. But I learned about this watch and bought it from an ad on aBlogtoWatch, which I thought was really funny and ironic. And then I think I did a video of this that I actually ended up taking down maybe because I talked a long time about the caliber 1887 movement, which, as many people know, was licensed from Seiko, the base architecture. And then Tag Heuer reformulated and made it in Switzerland and did a lot of things. But this is the core architecture is a Japanese movement. That the core architecture of that was actually of a pre-existing Swiss movement. But I said it's really cool that I have a watch from a Swiss brand that's a limited edition for Japan, and it has this movement that has a connection to Japan, and da-da-da-da-da. And at the time, Tag Heuer was like trying to like brush aside that story and said, we don't want to bring that up because it brings up a lot of headaches. The reason I was so excited about that story is I never saw it as a scandal for Tag Heuer at all is because I know the backstory of why and how Mr. Baban, who was the CEO at the time of Tag Heuer, actually went to Seiko themselves to license it. And the reason he did that is because he was in a fight with the Swatch Group to get movements. The Swatch Group did not want to supply Tag Heuer as a competitor with movements, and Tag Heuer needed chronographs. I was like, what the hell do we do? So they were faced with this interesting issue where they either had to make their own chronograph movements from scratch, or they could figure out a way of making them, or producing something with existing architecture. So because they were in a time crunch, Mr. Baban was forced, because of the fight with the Swatch Group, to find a way to make chronographs and went to Seiko because they made great ones. And it was really a flattering thing for Seiko to say, hey, a Swiss watch brand wants to license your technology. So when the 1887 movement came out, Tag Heuer got a lot of crap because they didn't per se announce that they had base architecture from Seiko. And the reason they didn't mention that had nothing to do with the fact that they were trying to hide it from consumers. In fact, they never even realized that consumers would find out so quickly. They were trying to play diplomatically with the Swatch Group because they thought the Swatch Group would attack them publicly if it was seen that they're using a movement that's sourced in Japan, because there was this big fight between the Swatch Group and Tag Heuer at the time, and there was a lot of inner politics. So for consumers, it kind of looked as though Tag Heuer was trying to like sneakily pull one over on them, when in reality, Tag Heuer was trying not to mention it for political reasons, not to upset the Swatch Group. And that is an amazing story that probably no one knows about, or very few people know about. And Mr. Baban himself sat me down for like 3 hours one time to tell me that. So I think it was really fantastic. So what is the Nendo has these hands that I believe this artist found from like a very old like grandfather clock or something like that, and wanted to make red versions of them for this dial. And I actually find these hands to be more legible than the stock hands that came with the Carrera. Okay, so you like that story? Trying to think here. I'm looking at all the comments here. Yeah, the story is very, very interesting. There's a few more details here and there. I'm sort of giving you the main points, but I would never say that Tag Heuer was in a position where they were trying to deceive consumers. They really weren't. They were actually trying to do the right thing politically. Yeah, I don't know what Nendo does. Someone says they make stools. That's great. It wasn't okay. Swatch didn't want Tag to use their movement. Swatch wanted to hurt Tag, and so they were. It was a competitor. So they would jump on the idea that this Swiss-made company was using Japanese architecture. Someone's from Garberville, California. I'm in California. I don't even know Garberville. Do I plan to write a book about horology someday? I mean, I wrote the book, The World's Most Expensive Watches, so I do have a book on that. I don't know what I want to write a book about. I think, look, horology is like the study of instruments that, measure time. I don't really think that's mostly what we care about. We care about something else related to watches. It's not them as being an instrument to measure time. So I think the idea I'm mostly fascinated about is the relationship that men have with their tools. A man and his tools. Now, that's a concept I'm very fascinated in. What we got here? Do I have any Angelus watches? No, but I like Angelus. Infinite Collector? Yeah, I mean, part of it is like an appreciation of tools as well as the search for the perfect tool, if it agrees, or if you can even find it. The backstory and popular watch. I don't know all the backstories. I know enough to know how little I know. And I guess I know more stories than most people, but let's put it this way. As someone who's not Swiss and who doesn't speak French, I will be kept out of an enormous amount of conversations and information on purpose. They don't really want me to know. I mean, it's discreet society. Discreet society. What's the most expensive watch I've ever tried on my wrist? Well, there's certain historic watches that don't really have a value associated with them, so I don't know, they might be the most expensive ones. But I think from a retail price, it was probably the Jacob & Company Billionaire that had, I think it was $18 million. $18 million. This is a azimuth, and this watch was supposed to look like a tank. And the idea, this is, we talked about the azimuth of Mr. Roboto the other day. We didn't talk about this one. So this is inspired by land tanks from World War I believe. And it wasn't the most comfortable thing in the world, but that's fine. Love the detailing on the case here. So you read the time with the hours here in this sort of like little turret box, and then minutes here. So let's go ahead and adjust the time here and see what that looks like. Oh, there we go. I was going back in time. So it's a retrograde hand there. You see how that moves? Boop. It's actually not horrendously illegible, but it's fun. It's fun. So let's put this on. Yeah, you see the World War I, but it's not even like tank. It was like, what do they call them? Like land, there's just, those things are cool though. They weren't that practical because I think they were like very susceptible to things like landmines and bombs. Like one man with like an RPG versus one of these things, and the tank didn't have much. But these were a cool concept at the time, and it was all about how do you get troops through barbed wire and machine gun fire, and it made sense to have a heavily armored vehicle. Tanks don't make that much sense in modern warfare, but man, are they cool. I actually talked to Zin, and I was like, hey, Zin, wouldn't it be cool to make a watch for a modern tank operator? And if you think about it, it's a very interesting use case scenario because you're in confined conditions, so your watches get knocked around a lot. Visibility can be difficult in there, can be very hot. So I think that a watch for a tank operator would be something very interesting. Yeah, these things moved very, very slow. They were basically walking. They were slowly moving targets on treads. A bit more comfortable than I think it might come across as. Definitely not something I want to wear every single day, but a conversation piece. They were great for destroying small villages. Do you know that from personal experience? I've never actually heard that. This weapon was just fantastic for destroying small villages. I guess that goes for a lot of comments. Small villages tend to be very poorly defended, right? Very poorly defended. Okay, so this is Another watch is recent. This is the Giorgio Piola. He is an illustrator that draws Formula One cars, and he has a watch now. So he has a little bit of a brand. I don't know if there's other watches within. Oh, there's a few. There's a few quartz ones, but this was the fanciest one, and this is the I forgot the name of this watch, but it's the Giorgio Piola. And in pictures, this watch looks, I don't know, not great. But in person, this watch is really cool. Really, really cool. So you have a carbon case, titanium, aluminum. I think it has some ceramic in there as well. Of course, the bezel looks like a disc brake. Yes, it's supposed to look like a brake caliber. I mean, it's not a real brake caliber. It'd be for a very small little one. 7750 automatic movement in there. I like this watch. It's attractive. It's cool. It's big. But remember, if one of the things that typifies the world of racing in Formula One is a lot of big, bold colors. So this watch was a little bit on the larger side for me, but given the fact that the strap integrates well and there aren't, the lugs go straight down, this worked really nicely. And I think that one of the things I liked about this watch versus a lot of Formula One inspired watches is this one's very legible. And if you look closely on the dial, while there are definitely decorative elements, they understood very inherently that you can't just stick a bunch of random stuff on the dial that doesn't need to be there. Yes, so this is one of those forged carbon cases. That's true. This actually reminds me of Gorilla, not on the shape of the case, but in terms of the case materials and the fact that they have that red aluminum ring there. Someone is saying French is not that difficult. I find it to be difficult. I'm not someone who naturally picks up other languages well. I grew up with two languages, so I'm not someone that speaks only one language, but I've been going to Europe and French-speaking places in Europe, such as France and parts of Switzerland, for so many years. You'd think that I'd pick it up. I do know a lot of French, but I don't know. I'm not quick to picking it up like some other people are. I'm very jealous of those people that pick up languages very quickly. I pick up certain things quickly, so I'm not completely stupid. But when it comes to picking up languages, I'm just not that good at it. I do remember that I was in Russia one time, and I picked up the Cyrillic alphabet very quickly. That was very easy, actually, to pick up Cyrillic alphabet, so I could read words and things like that. I didn't know what they meant, but the Cyrillic alphabet has all these variations of vowels that I can't even pronounce with my own American tongue. So even though I could read a lot of the words in Russian, I couldn't pronounce a lot of them very well because there's these small nuances in the vowels that I just really couldn't do. So this was a fun one, not too expensive, but this was a really cool watch. Definitely for someone who's doesn't care about brand, because no one really knows about this brand, but this was actually really well done. And I say this because it's sometimes easy to dismiss these little micro brands that come around, but once in a while they make some really, really cool stuff, especially if you look at the pedigree. I talked about this. Jody keeps asking me about the watches. You have to ask yourself, sir, or whoever's out there, maybe Jody, that could go either way. I'm a professional wristwatch reviewer. I've been doing this since 2007. I have access and relationships that a lot of you people don't have. So to ask me these questions is kind of a moot point because I don't represent the average consumer. I have a combination of watches that are mine and not mine and things like that. I don't necessarily want to make a point of that. I don't want people to feel like, oh, he's got a bunch of stuff I don't. What does he have that I don't have? Well, I have a particular job that is unique. And so I don't want anyone to try to compare their collections against mine because it's not very fair and it doesn't make any sense. So let's go back to this. This is the Girard-Perregaux Laureato 42 millimeter. I think that these are an incredible value compared to, say, like a Royal Oak or something like that, which is vastly more expensive and I'm not sure a much better watch. And what's really interesting about this one, it was its two-tone rose gold with titanium. And that's uncommon. So it's lightweight, but it has that feel of two-tone. And the titanium is finished very, very well. Blue dial. Yeah, this is a very, very nice one. I think that the Laureato, while I'm not interested in every single version of it, is a sleeper hit. And if you are interested in sort of a prestigious watch that has integrated bracelet from the sort of 70s, and you feel a little upset with, Patek Philippe Nautilus and Royal Oak pricing, this is a great place to go. This is a great place to go. Yeah, the 38 millimeter one has great proportions. Again, this is a 42, so this is a little bit on the larger side, I think for a dress watch, but it actually looks quite nice. And again, I think there's a few different sizes of this, so don't feel bad if you think that this size is a little big. The 38, again, is going to be a little bit more universally nice. Oh, someone just got here. The show is almost over. It'll be over in a few minutes, but you can always watch the entire thing. Oh, someone just gave me a tip. I still don't know how to pronounce it. Wrist Ross? Wrist Ross, is that how you pronounce it? Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's very nice of you. Perfect size. How much do you want for? Oh boy, if I started selling watches this way. Actually, someone pitched me on that. They're like, hey, Ariel, why don't you do a home shopping network style thing where you have watchmakers on here and you talk about watches and they try to sell them. And I don't know if that would work, if that makes sense, if I want that for my brand. I mean, I'm not really a salesperson. I think that there's a lot of Wrist Ross. Okay, I'm obsessive about pronunciation and I don't want to pronounce it wrong. Thank you for that. So I don't know. I mean, there's something to be said about selling watches in this format, but I do not see myself as a salesperson. I don't like that. I'm more of an academic, more of a reviewer. I think that, if you're a consumer, there's people who are trying to get your money, and there's people that are trying to help consult with you. I'm more of a consultant. Remember, my training is as a lawyer. So I always feel like I have a fiduciary obligation to anyone I speak to. Like Rick Ross. Sorry, I'm just looking at all your comments here. Does it have a guilloche dial in the GP? No, I think it's a stamp dial. People liking that GP. Yeah, I like it as well. Someone else is a lawyer there. Yes. What a great background going to law school. I think everyone should go to law school. But in these days, I don't know, maybe everyone should go to medical school as well. Law student there. Well, keep it up. That was one of my favorite times of my life, was being in law school. I know that maybe that sounds crazy, but I was living in San Francisco, and this was before a bunch of bad stuff happened, and it was a great time. I thoroughly enjoyed law school. I recommend it for everyone. I don't know that I would recommend for everyone to be an attorney, but going to law school is a wonderful way of understanding how the world works. It really is a wonderful framework for being able to debate and make decisions and be a good critical thinker and just understand the general framework of how the world is. And going to law school helps you read things and understand things in a way that I don't know that a layperson knows how to. Miss going to the campus, I can imagine. I don't know what it's like for all the students out there that have to do all this distance learning or all this learning, these web classes. I've taken some of those web classes. It's not the same. Not being into a classroom it's a detriment. But the irony is this, and I think some people who've seen some of my old interviews know this, but what did I do in most of law school? Well, law school was the first time for me in a school environment where I was allowed, if not required, to have my laptop. And so in college, I would handwrite notes in classes. And then in law school, they're like, oh, do everything in computer. So you have your computer in front of you in class and, the professor's lecturing about whatnot. And you also have the internet. So I started looking at watches. So I was known as that guy who was looking at watches on eBay during class, because I would always sit in the front, but I was always I didn't care about what people saw on my screen. So I was literally known as that guy looking at watches during class, especially on eBay. So law school was fine. I got through it, passed everything very nicely, but I also used it as a wonderful opportunity to learn more and more about watches. And I started aBlogtoWatch in 2007, just about a month after taking the bar exam. I was really afraid. I was like, oh my God, if I didn't pass the bar exam, what am I going to do? I don't want to take this thing again. And that's that. So I studied a lot about watches during law school. Before that as well, but a lot. Yes, this is a Frederique Constant. This is one of their manufacturer watches. This is a slightly older timepiece. This is the gold-toned one. Do I think COVID-19 will have a long time effect on the watch market? It will have a big effect on every single market. Oh, thanks for sharing my bio. Look, I don't know how much people want to know about me. I'm usually a pretty discreet person. I don't talk about myself too much. I really don't know, um, what people want. Oh, and I did pass the bar. I was really happy about that. I remember when I finished the exam, I took it in a warehouse at Fort Mason in San Francisco. And it was this beautiful place, and you saw this view of the ocean every day because it was right on the ocean. I was like, man, what a great place to take the bar exam. But after day 3 of the bar exam, I remember thinking to myself, if I didn't pass this exam, I don't know what somebody needs to do to pass it. Because I followed the script when it came to studying. I went to the Barbary classes. I took every practice exam. I spent 3.5 months studying for that test like it was a job. And so afterwards, I felt so good about it because I'd been practicing and studying. It was literally the only test I'd ever studied for in my entire life. I'm not kidding you. The only test I'd ever studied for in my entire life was that test. I should have studied for other tests before. I just didn't know how to. Bad study skills, ADD or whatever. But I handled it well. So if you are a law student and you want advice on how to pass the bar exam, just follow Barbary, exactly what they say. You don't have to think about it at all. Someone is just miles from me right now. Well, then we should go hiking. Social distancing be damned. What's your take on traditional brands exploring high-tech materials, Blancpain? Yeah, it's great. I mean, there's no better way to make something old new again than by rendering it in a modern skin. It's a very good technique. It's not done well all the time, but it's done very well a lot of the times. This Frederic Constant has an in-house made movement, and at the time it was probably one of the best deals around for a Swiss made watch with an in-house movement. They still make them today, and I thought they look really nice. The Azimuth, the Predator 2.0 is that from Rebellion? Is that what the Predator 2.0 is? Considering, what do I think of current Frederic Constant watches? Look, I mean, they still make a watch that I believe is very similar to this. I have a few Frederic Constants. I like them. I guess it depends on the model. Okay, so here's, what else should I talk about here? I might not get to all of these. I always say this show's going to be short, guys. I need to get out. And then I go even longer than I was anticipating going. What do we got here? This is a Louis Chevrolet. Isn't that something? I thought this watch was really cool. This is another one that we wrote about on aBlogtoWatch, of course. Louis Chevrolet is an old name in watchmaking. It's actually related to the same Chevrolet of Chevrolet automobiles in the United States. So it's the same Chevrolet. And this was a very classic brand for a long time. And then 1 or 2 years ago, they came out with this wonderfully crazy watch that I was just thrilled about. I was just thrilled about this watch because it wasn't expensive. It was under $2,000, very legible. It's quite comfortable, amazingly over-engineered watch. Inside is a Valjo 7750. Isn't that cool? Someone's talking about the Frederic Constant moon phases. Yeah, I do have one of those watches, or one of the manufacturer moon ones. Again, it's very difficult to find a watch like this that has legibility as well as this type of insanity. Ooh, there was a good question there. Is there one brand to suggest to a lawyer or a judge? Which one would it be? Again, what is this? What does people want to choose one? I mean, we live in a world of consumer choice. I mean, outside of COVID-19 isolation, we live in a world of consumer choice. Now we live in a world of confinement where we're told what to do like children, which I hate. Again, I completely understand the need to save lives, and it would be, inhuman of me to say that we should look upon this in a non-sympathetic way. But I wonder, when we look back at this period in history, how the decisions we make now will be judged. Let's see here. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. If I had to choose one watch to never buy again, I said that before. That was an Invicta. Before I started aBlogtoWatch, I went ahead and I bought an Invicta. I was curious, and it part of it came out a screw, like a case screw. Okay, so look at these screws on the case, right? There's actually these screws here. This is a functional screw. If this came out, you'd be like, how did this come out so fast? Wasn't the screw down? But there was a screw like that on an aBlogtoWatch, and it just came out. Now, this was a long time ago, but that experience allowed me to feel like, no, Invicta's never going to be for me. Never going to be for me. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is another Maurice de Mauriac. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Is someone else, do I have any Glacute Originals? Yes, I have a couple of those. I'll bring them out at some point. So this is the L1, and this was designed by an industrial designer in Zurich, a guy named Fabian Schwartzler, something like that, who is a really good chair designer, and he designed the L1, the L2, and the L3, all from Maurice de Mauriac, and this is the L1. This is the black version, or this is the DLC one. And what I like about this is sort of the Swiss Bauhaus minimalism, which is something that Switzerland does quite well. And this one was very, very pretty. So I agree. This is a very pretty, attractive watch. This was a 39 millimeter case, I believe, that I think they did very well. Maurice de Mauriac always has amazing straps. So this is, I think, one of their Barenia leather straps. The funny thing is, for whatever reason, a black watch on a brown strap sometimes works. I don't know why that is, but sometimes it just works really well. What do you think of Icopod and the new Kickstarter? The new Icopod watches are nice, but don't try to compare them to the old ones. The old ones, being much more expensive, is a superior product in terms of how it was made, for sure. So again, this is the Maurice de Mauriac L1, and there's a funny little quirk here. If you look at the dial, the text is so little, and I remember when I wrote about this on aBlogtoWatch, I was commenting about almost being a joke. Well, nobody really looks at the dial text, but like you see there, it says automatic. But like honestly, like if you don't have really good eyes, even if you're looking at it like from a foot away, it's very difficult to see that it says automatic. And I almost use a little joke because no one really looks at the text on the dial anyways, and a lot of times they're there just for aesthetic purposes. But it was just kind of amusing to me that it was so small there on the dial, especially where it says automatic. You'd have to look at like a magnifying glass, be like, oh, that's what that says. Again, this is the Maurice de Mauriac L1 in the all black case, 39 millimeters. A very handsome timepiece, especially if you like Bauhaus aesthetic. This is a Hess Urin. This is a small Swiss brand out of Lucerne. Kind of expensive, trying to figure this stuff out. Someone keeps asking about Ming. Listen, tell Ming, send Ariel some watches and he will talk about them. What is my opinion on Jacob and Quality? Jacob and Quality. Jacob and Company. I like Jacob and Company, to be honest. I mean, their more modern watches are definitely better than some of their older watches. Like, I wouldn't buy a Jacob and Company quartz watch. But they are very legitimate Swiss-made watches made, right there with all the other good stuff. Real big focus on exclusive movements. They're not all for everyone, to be sure, but I actually think that Jacob and Company watches, if you get a good deal on them, especially, are not something to scoff at. They make some really cool stuff. So this watch, I think it's very difficult to determine here in the light, but the dial is created with diamond powder dust. And so it's a black dial that has a little bit of a shininess to it because of a diamond powder. And I guess the light here is a little bit too muted, but if you had more direct sunlight here that wasn't as diffused, the dial would be a little bit more shiny. This watch was quite on the expensive side, and I don't think they realized, what the market demanded. Yeah, it's Hess. What's it say? I think it says Luzerne. I think Luzerne. Someone's obsessing over simple Swatch watches because they saved the Swiss watch industry. They did in the 80s. The question is, who will save the Swiss watch industry this time? This case is actually hand polished, and I wanted to use it as an example to explain something about polishing. Not all polishing is created equal. And this one, it's hand polished, but rather than having a lot of lines in the same direction, it seems to have been one of like these types of polishing. And that doesn't always create the best look for a watch case, in my opinion. It's fine, but I think watch cases look a little bit better with polishing in just one direction. So if you look at the polishing on a Rolex case, or even like a Seiko case, there's a little bit different of an effect. This has a little bit more of, I call, a blur effect, because this is a hand polished case where someone goes like that. I think it's quite interesting if you know a lot about polishing, just to sort of understand. Someone saying Zaratsu is the best. Well, Zaratsu is fantastic, but it's a mechanical technique where they use machines and things like that, which is fine. This is a hand technique, so it's just interesting to see how they're a little bit different. This is a Campagnola. I'm actually going to save this for another time, but this is another instance where this is Zaratsu quality or similar to it a little bit, and you can see that this is a more machined one, and the lines look a little bit more defined, whereas this one, the lines of the case kind of blur in a little bit. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is that the definition on the angles of the item that's being polished look a little bit better with a more consistent line, as opposed to sort of the more hand technique where you kind of rub with it with like a polishing cloth. So this is the Hess Luzerne watch. It was just kind of expensive, but it was nice as a dress watch for sure. Really nice as a dress watch. Okay, let's see here. What else do we got? Don't got too much more time. Did I cover everything? Does anybody want to see this one again? I talked about the petite seconds. Is that what that was called? Wait, what's called the petite seconds? Because this one does not have a petite second. Are Rolex cases boring in terms of contours? No, they're not boring. It's been the same thing for a very long time. And I showed this one yesterday. This is the Terracella Mare. I got to wear this a little bit more. I wore this watch, honestly. Someone's talking about rotation. I fell in love with this watch for so much. I wore it for maybe like 3 weeks straight. This was a limited edition of 88 pieces. And this is the Zero Sen. This company, Terracella Mare, is, I think, in some state of hibernation right now. I don't know where the brand is. But apparently they sort of gone quiet right now. And that happens a lot. These brands kind of go quiet. And so one of the things I love about collecting is there's not necessarily consistency. A lot of watch brands in some ways are vanity projects for people that have other businesses that are a little bit more traditional, a little bit more stable. And because they're vanity projects, the interest in making watches kind of ebbs and flows. So in very good times, you have you have a proliferation of new watches, and in bad times you don't really have as many. It's very, very quiet, and that's related to the fact of some of these business entities and what they're. I mean, look at Parmigiani. Parmigiani in some ways is arguably a vanity brand for the family that owns Novartis, which is a big pharmaceutical company. They turned it into a real business for making watches and things like that. But essentially, it wasn't like, hey, we got this great way to make money, let's make watches. And then I'll just show you this one again from yesterday, because I was really sort of falling in love with this one. This is the Girard, it's owned by Girard-Perregaux. The Jean Richard, owned by Girard-Perregaux, just showing that these watches are cousins because they're the same company. And hey everyone, I'm just saying hello to people coming. So this one was the LPR, the Gyroscope LPR, and the 12 o'clock hour indicator also doubled as the power reserve indicator. And this was again one of those sleeper watches like nobody knew about. But I guess that's fortunate to be me, because I learned about all these weird things. Or I know how to see a watch that just seeing pictures and be like, that could be something. Oh, someone's talking about the micro rotors on the Vaucher watches. Yeah, they do a good job. I was showing one yesterday when I was showing the Carl Suki and Son. So this was, again, this watch is so much fun. I got to find a better strap for this. Nothing wrong with the strap, but I want one that has a little bit more personality. I can't decide what a good strap would be for this. I mean, obviously the strap could be white and red, but that might be a little bit weird. Like, what would be like a good white strap, maybe have some organic texture with like red stitching? Would that be cool? Hard to say. Okay, everyone, this has been about the hour. I really appreciate everyone coming here to talk watches with me. Like I've been saying, I'm probably going to do up to about 25 episodes of this and then change the format a little bit, maybe do something else. And I would definitely like to hear your feedback and suggestions on what you'd like a little bit different. The aBlogtoWatch team has been telling me that one of the things they want me to try to do is try to make slightly more selected options of watches that go together, like just chronographs or just military watches or just, titanium watches or something like that. And I'd love to hear about, if you want to have other people feature on the show, if you want me to have guests, if you want me to do an episode with Archie Luxury. I know a lot of you are Archie Luxury audience members, so I did a show with Paul one time. It was fun. Maybe I'll do one with him. I'll see what he has to say about that. Does it damage a movement to set the time backwards? Not on most movements. Not on most movements. Get Archie on. We might do that on Instagram Live. If any of you look at Instagram Live, that might be a place that we might want to do it. We'll just continue to explore. He's what AC3? What is that? I forget. It's like something the third. Archibald Chesterfield. Is that this thing? I always forget what that stands for. Yeah, I'll have to check in with him and see what he's doing. I haven't chatted with him in a while. People say he's kind of going crazy during the COVID-19 thing, which is understandable. A lot of people are. Only on YouTube, not Instagram, please. We got to experiment a little bit. But okay, everyone, thank you so much. It was really great to have you all here. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day and stay sane and safe and healthy inside isolation. We'll get through all of this together. Bye, everyone.